Where's my D20?
Gobbo!
Worth it. Welcome back to Hobbs Horror Stories. It's Gabbo, still taking over for this week. Hobbs still napping after last time's little, incident. But don't worry, he's fine. Sometimes all it takes is a little blunt force trauma, possible brain damage, and highly experimental and potentially toxic potions to really get you over being sick. Maybe they were right about banning me from the medical field. Lifelong charges aside, I'm back here with another great story for you all. And this time, it's actually a D&D story, so all you fantasy lovers can stop hiding in the bushes and plugging your ears. This one's for you. Today's story comes from Reddit on r/rpghorrorstories, and was written by Ayin. Their big story is called Cleric Player Refuses to Accept Any Form of Non-Standard Fantasy Elements Existing in the Game, Demands to Have My Warforged Fighter Kicked Out. Wonder if that player has ever heard of the Tiffany effect, or has seen any fantasy setting in the last 2 decades with the ever-present, super advanced ancient society that somehow made robots and stuff, but don't worry, it's still magic trope. Not that I'm complaining, I'll never say no to a good piece of hex tech, but with that, let's start the story. I've played D&D and other tabletop RPGs a good bit, mostly as a DM, but this is from the often rare times that I get to play as an adventurer. Our characters consist of Ed, our DM, Mandy, Ed's girlfriend and an elven wizard named Lynn, Joe, friend of Ed and mine, playing a halfling bard named Slash, yes, the Slash, Gabriel, our player in question, playing a human cleric named Theogard, and me, playing a warforged fighter named G15O, or Jiso as he was called. Homebrew setting, the plot was very cool but doesn't really matter to this story. A little backstory is important to understand what happens next, both in the game's universe and IRL. Gabriel was Ed and Joe's friend, and he invited him to our table. They seemed to be good friends and I was happy we'd have another player along with us. He seemed a bit awkward and shy. It was cute at first, but then it began to be a pretty big red flag the more sessions we went on, and it was shown that he was just pretty unlikable and downright controlling. He would be telling Ed what to do instead of just letting Ed do his thing, and then proceeded to sigh very condescendingly every time Ed chose not to listen to him. Alright, let's now go to an important aspect, Jiso. Jiso was a warforged who deserted from his military grounds after developing free will. He adopted a human identity, and named Jiso, and used a mask to disguise his face, as he was wanted by the kingdom that built him. I also made him pretend to be deformed and a mute after his time as a soldier, and he would speak through writing and paper and pass it to the players. It was a pretty fun gimmick and helped hide his identity. About 8 sessions into the game, during a battle against one of the BBEG's generals, a giant heavily armored minotaur with a magically prosthetic hoof, 1 or 3 turns away from killing him, the minotaur grabbed Jiso, and I rolled a natural 1 on a save, and he threw me against a wall and it knocked off and broke my mask, revealing my face. The rest of the party finishes killing the boss and comes in to help me as I'm downed. Gabriel. I take off his metal mask and pour the greater healing potion on his mask. Ed. No, you can't. It isn't his mask. That's his face. Gabriel. What do you mean that's his face? Ed. That's his face. Jesus' face is made out of metal. Gabriel just looks confused and steps back into his chair for a second. He stays quiet. Ed makes Mandy roll a history check on me, and she succeeds and then explains what a warforged is. As everyone seems pretty excited, Gabriel just looks confused, and that look of confusion doesn't take long to turn into anger, and I don't think it'll be anytime soon that I'll forget the shit that came out of that guy's mouth. Gabriel. Ed. Can I talk to you for a second? In private? Gabriel and Ed leave the room and go talk in the kitchen. Joe sighs deeply, and Mandy and Joe's expression of excitement fades. I ask him what's wrong. Joe. Gabe is being Gabe again. I don't know why now. Apparently this wasn't the first time that Gabriel disliked another player's choice and complained to the DM. The two come back after about 10 minutes and Gabriel looks furious. Ed looks like he was seconds away from jumping from the nearest bridge. Gabriel, as Theogard. I refuse to heal an unnatural being. For the next hour or so, Gabriel is mostly silent and just stares at me and Ed from time to time with this livid look on his face. Jiso gets helped by Lynn and Slash, and we continue the rest of our adventure and loot some stuff. Gabriel in particular jumped to grab the greatsword the Minotaur had dropped, and cock-blocked me from getting any loot. 1 or 2 days after this session, Gabriel texts me. I must note that he did not have my number, and neither did I have his. He was demanding that I retire Jiso and roll up a new character under the excuse that Warforged were just robots, and that was breaking the fantasy setting and the game's rules. Obviously, I refused, and that son of a bitch had the audacity to threaten me to kick me out of the game if I didn't do so. Just so we're clear, he was not the DM. Next session, he arrives earlier in Ed's house and he looks at me with this anger in his eyes. Later, Ed would tell me that he went there earlier just to ask him to kick me out of the game. The session goes by somewhat smoothly. It was a bit hard to ignore the elephant in the room, specifically with how passive-aggressive he was acting, but we progressed through it. Up until a certain part in the story. Jisoo, Lin, Theogard, and Slash all go to the tavern, and Slash puts on a show to entertain the folk while we talk to our employer, who contracted us to kill the Minotaur, and we get our payment. Thing is, the NPC was part of the kingdom that built my character, and when it was revealed that I was a Warforged, I told them my actual backstory, and the same crest that the NPC used was the same crest of the kingdom. And let's say when Gabriel put 2 and 2 together, things went south really quickly. Gabriel explicitly told the NPC that I was a Warforged. More specifically, the wanted Warforged. Ed was pretty much forced to follow up with what Gabriel was doing, and I don't blame him. He unmasked me in front of the NPC and blew my cover. All of the town guards converged onto me and Lin while we were trying to escape, and unfortunately, we were caught. Gabriel, very smugly, "Well, I guess now that they killed you, you're gonna have to roll a new character. Hopefully you pick one that fits the game you're playing." Ed, my lord and savior, sweet, sweet Ed. "Oh, actually, Jisoo, you were not killed. They shut your motion down, but you're still alive and you're now being carried to a prison alongside Lin." I wish I was able to have a picture of Gabriel's face in that moment. He looked like he was about to pull a knife and stab at me on the spot. Gabriel, "Are you fucking kidding me? Are you gonna let that fucking bullshit run around as a robot? We were supposed to play real D&D, not fucking sci-fi crap." Everyone tries to keep their cool, and Ed grabs Gabriel into another room, and we only hear some muffled shouts of "bullshit" and "fuck you" coming from the kitchen. Joe loses his shit at some point and begins to laugh hysterically at the situation, while Mandy just seems concerned. After this session, Ed announced that Gabriel would not be joining us again, and that if we wanted to, he would retcon the event of the guards taking us to the prison, and he'd write that after completing the mission, Theogard got his payment and left the group. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the last time we heard from him, but that's a story for another day. We had to stop the campaign due to IRL stuff, and sadly we never got back into it, and I don't think we ever will. In hindsight, I think I should have seen that coming. He was kind of a dick once he started to get along with the rest of the group, even being creepy sometimes to Mandy and some NPCs. Gabriel was also very much a control freak, and would act similar to this whenever he got nerfed by the DM, or when Ed told him he couldn't do something. TLDR, Cleric player refuses to play in a game with a Warforged because it's not true fantasy. Demands me to either roll a new character or kick me out afterwards, and then throws a tantrum when he fails to get me killed and is removed from the game afterwards. Well, that was certainly something. I got a lot to say here, so bear with me for a little bit. Hearing about Gabriel and his bullshit really got under my skin. But before I start laying into this Gabriel, I want to talk about OP first. Or Gush, if I'm gonna be more accurate. If you somehow stumbled upon this video, Ian, I seriously gotta commend you here. Not just for putting up with someone like Gabriel for as long as you did, which is honestly a feat by itself, but also for your character Jisoo. You did a great job at making a character that not only worked in the setting, but was tied to the world that the GM created. You got a compelling backstory with potential plot hooks, both for past and future events, and a fun gimmick with the notes that definitely helped immerse both you, the DM, and the other players into the narrative and the world that they were spinning. DMs would kill to have a player like you at their table, and I'm sure you've inspired other players either at your table or just from listening to your stories. It was actually a player like you that got me so invested in tabletop RPGs, so I have a ton of respect for anyone who puts that much effort into their characters and role-playing, so props to you. People like Gabriel, on the other hand, oh boy, oh do I despise people like him. Hob and I both have dealt with someone like that before, and it nearly killed our enjoyment of tabletop RPGs. But that's a story, or even stories, for another time. So where do I even begin with Gabriel? Well, starting with him as a person, someone that manipulative is not someone I would recommend keeping in contact with. Block their numbers, block their social media, cut off all ties ASAP. Trust me, they will never be worth your time. And if you ever get invited to a game that they're in, drop it immediately. Say it with me now. No D&D is better than bad D&D. Now, about their true fantasy mindset, there are so many problems with that. While I can understand where they're coming from on a surface level, they take it way too far. Problem 1, it's subjective. Everyone sees fantasy as different scales. Problem 2, In a world where just about anyone can use magic and those that can't can make deals with powerful beings to gain that ability, the sky's the limit on what can and can't exist. Problem 3. If sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, then magic is indistinguishable from advanced technology. If Warforged don't fit in the fantasy genre, then explain how golems do. If space travel isn't fantasy, then what about the planar multiverse? Is sailing along the astral plane not just space travel with extra steps? Are you seeing my point here? True fantasy is a myth. Even going off of what feels fantasy, you'll still find things like the Tiffany problem or the aforementioned golem problem. So if you can't use the argument of what is and isn't fantasy, how do you determine what belongs in the world? Well, that's not up to you, it's up to the DM, and only the DM, because you're playing in their world. If they say something fits, then it fits, and you can't say otherwise. If you got a problem with that, then you can talk to them out of game, not in the middle of the game. But if you're pissy about something that another player has or is playing as, then suck it up. That decision was made the moment the DM okayed their character. And if you don't agree with their decision, then you can leave. Did I mention that this Gabriel person really pissed me off? And that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Oh, perfect timing, Sebastian. How's Hobbs', treatment coming along?
Very good. Very good. He should be back in top shape by morning. That or he'll turn into an owlbear.
I kind of want to see that.
Bobo,
Geez, how are you so quiet?
Bobo, what did Sebastian give me?
Oh, nothing. Just a little...
An experimental elixir. I'm still studying the side effects. Have you experienced diarrhea, sudden implosions of the heart, blue ear, hair, or green elephant tusks within 12 hours?
Okay, for the record, I didn't know about any of that.
Gobbo.
Alright, get it over with. We'll see you guys next time on Goblins and Gremlins.
I hope you enjoyed today's story.
Did you really have to
If
do
you
that
have
to
any
my
stories
arm?
you would like to have read here on the
Okay,
channel,
yeah, fair
please
enough. I
share them
deserve
to
that.
the email in the description below. Also, if you could please like, comment, and subscribe, it would help us greatly to slay the monster known as... the algorithm. Also, if you're looking for more great horror stories like these, please click the link at the end of this video. Thank you from all of us here at Goblins and Gremlins.